So, welcome everyone, and welcome, Marcus. I'm so excited to be chatting to you today. I'll briefly introduce you and then jump straight into asking you some questions. So, Marcus is a coach who helps people build sustainable and fulfilling experiences with food, fitness, and relationships. He's the founder and host of the Strong Not Starving podcast, which, if you don't already follow, I highly recommend following. I listen to Marcus regularly, so I feel like I know your voice so well.
Oh, you're too kind.
He's also currently undertaking counselling training aligned with the standards of the British Association for Counselling, Psychology, and Psychotherapy. So, Marcus, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to be doing what you're doing today?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Again, it's really nice catching up with you, and I love our conversation, so I really appreciate being here. Essentially, the work that I do has come from multiple decades of wanting to find real answers and solutions for the problems that got in not only my way, but in the way of the people who I try to help. So when I was in a rough place in my teens and 20s, when I was trying to find my way through this stuff, a lot of the answers that were readily available just made my situation worse. And it was very, very hard to find someone who really got it and really understood where I was coming from. So I've just been pulling on threads for multiple decades, learning both through formal education and just through personal experience and working with clients. And yeah, that's how I've gotten to this place.
Mm, yeah. And I know, and obviously because I've listened to your podcast so much, you also struggled with food and that kind of thing. Do you mind sharing a little bit about what that looked like for you or how it showed up?
Sure. So these days, what I struggled with as a teenager would be labeled atypical anorexia. So it wasn't recognized as anorexia at the time because I was, first of all, male, still am, and was very, very lean and kind of built like a racing greyhound, but at the same time, like, oh, he's healthy and kind of muscular and he's
Mm,
just a young lad who's into his sport. Uh, but no, it was atypical anorexia. I was ticking all those boxes, which then over time became bulimia, and then from bulimia into different versions of orthorexia and health anxiety and binge eating and eating disorder. So all that happened over the course of about 15 years.
yeah, so I mean, such a similar journey in some ways to me, although not the anorexia part, but started off with dieting and then
Mm,
that led to kind of binge eating and bulimia and then later orthorexia. And I find it really interesting that so many people that I talk to that struggle with their relationship with food in the first instance, and it manifests as, well, in your case, atypical anorexia, but in the later years, sort of turns into or morphs into orthorexia.
yeah, I've noticed that too with a
Mm,
lot of people. As we try and make our way out of it, we find our way to, oh, now I'm just being healthy, but maybe some
yeah.
of the same things operating underneath the surface are driving us towards a different version of something a little bit familiar.
Yeah, very interesting. And what helped you recover after those 15 years? What was it that
Really getting to a point where I was just like, I can't do this anymore. This is not
mm,
working. I
yeah,
remember having this realization that everything I've sacrificed and how hard I've been working, I still don't have what I was promised. I was promised the cover model body and to be super happy and confident and successful and all this kind of stuff. And it took me about 15 years of sacrificing literally everything in my life to try and achieve that and not getting it before stopping to think, wait, it's just not working.
yeah,
I'm not getting what I was promised. So that led me to ask questions. And then as I built up my life outside of fitness and body image and all that kind of stuff and started forming new relationships and self-esteem, that then helped build momentum in a really positive direction.
Mm, amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm.
So one of the things I've heard you say in the past, and I think it's also on your website, is about this idea that the diet and fitness industry create more problems than they solve. Can you share a little bit about what you mean by that?
Mm. Fundamentally, it's because the popular or commercial fitness industry or space prioritizes what sells over what is actually effective. Now, I have a degree of sympathy or empathy for that because I know what it's like to be a fitness professional trying to earn a living. I worked in gyms in my 20s, and despite what someone in the fitness industry might know about sports science and what's effective, at the end of the day, they need to earn a living and they need to, they can't show up with a very boring message because they'll get passed over. So yeah, fundamentally, what's wrong is the commercial fitness industry prioritizes what's marketable and sellable over what is effective. Sometimes they're doing that very intentionally, and
Mm,
it's exceptionally selfish and careless. But sometimes it's just fitness professionals trying to find a way to be heard and stand out and earn a living doing what they love. So uh, it's complicated.
yeah. And it's so interesting, I think, because there's so much noise out there on social media platforms around, uh, what you say about this, what sells. It's almost like what gets the most clicks or what gets the most shares or the most traction isn't necessarily true.
Mm.
And then the stuff that is true and evidence-based is really boring. It's like, make sure you sleep well, eat your fruit and veg, move your body, don't restrict too much, but also, have a healthy, balanced, varied diet. It's stuff that we've maybe known for a really long time, but if you do a reel on that, it's like, yeah, boring, flick
Yeah.
past. But clickbait stuff, it's like don't eat bread because it's poisonous. Oh, that's interesting.
100%. Um, Social media has accelerated this whole process. What's clickable, what stands out. The most recent one over the last few years has been rage bait, like
Yeah.
rage bait, outrage, people pulling apart and criticizing other people's content. You know, Back in the 1600s when I was first on Instagram, you could release some informative stuff and people would find it
Yeah.
interesting and you'd get some traction with that. But it's become more and more about what is outrageous.
Mm. Yeah, and that's so true. And again, it's like very little evidence. I was watching something earlier, funnily enough, about someone was basically criticizing all diet sodas and basically saying that they're going to make you gain loads of weight. And then there was a nutritionist actually commenting on that, saying this is actually not true. So all the points in this talk about diet soda is going to make you gain loads of weight were all wrong. So he was like, yes, that's true in rats. It's I think it's that idea of like a little bit of knowledge can be really dangerous. And sometimes
Yes.
you see these people who have these huge platforms and they take a bit of information which maybe has a kernel of truth, but then they extrapolate it and say, well, then this is true for humans, or this is true for everybody, or this is how we should all eat. And it's like, oh, not really.
Yeah, it's like watching a train wreck in slow motion. That whole thing of a lot of people out there don't know enough to understand what they don't know.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's unfortunately true of a lot of people who have a lot of followers, a lot of attention.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. And another thing that I've also heard you say is that, so I guess thinking more about like exercise programs and stuff, when people can't keep up with their programs, they feel that they are the problem. and that
Mm.
becomes, and you've called that a tragic misunderstanding. Can you say a little bit more about that? Because I think that there's so many of my clients that really feel like that, especially when it comes to diets or healthy eating, that they can't sustain that, and then they feel like they are the problem, and then they feel worse about themselves, and then that's all the kind of really negative spiral. Tell me a bit more about what you're saying here.
Well, a truly effective program should focus on primarily two things: acknowledging and addressing the real obstacles involved in success and
Hmm.
consistency, and skill progression. Those two things are overlooked by most popular programs. So when I say skill progression, a lot of people are looking at the scales and the mirror to determine whether or not it's, quote, working, rather than focusing on developing skills, developing confidence, developing competency with the, essential skills necessary to actually do what we're trying to do.
Mm.
And while completely ignoring these big ticket items that could be real obstacles, like before we started recording, I mentioned that I'm going through training to become a couples coach, couples counselor. And one of the reasons why I've done that is because I was finding that so many people I was seeing who were struggling with their health to some degree, struggling with disordered eating, struggling with body image, but a lot of people who were just struggling with their health
Mm.
were really struggling in their significant relationships. And
Interesting.
when someone is in their home every day in an environment that is full of angst and tension and anxiety, and maybe they don't know whether, they're going to come home from work to someone who is in a nice mood and they're getting along with, versus they might be coming home to an absolute like war zone. Like that, it's how can someone be focusing on, okay, I want to make sure that I feel confident while practicing my,
Mm.
my squat or my kettlebell swing, or I want to make sure that I'm doing my shopping and picking up some nice food so I can do some cooking that I really enjoy. Like what? Like that just falls to the side if someone
Mm.
is really struggling in their relationship, or struggling financially, or like, so when I say addressing obstacles, I mean looking at real obstacles. And
Yeah.
very few, I'm sorry, but very few fitness professionals have the skill set, or let alone the certifications, to be helping people through the things that are the actual obstacles to
Hmm.
progress.
Yeah. I remember once here, and this was when before I had children. I remember hearing, oh, I used to spend a lot more time in that kind of that fitness world, and people talking about, oh, you have no excuses. You have the same number of hours in the day as
Oof.
everybody else. If I can do it, then you can do it. And to an extent, before I had children, I mean, I had time. And then after I had kids, I mean, the amount of time you have for yourself shrinks to probably negative numbers. It just is. And then I would hear people say, you everyone has the same number of hours in the day. And then they'd say something like, if Beyonce can do it, you can do it. And I'm like, Beyonce has an army of people helping her. She probably has a nutritionist, a cook, and all those things. And then, if those kinds of people have children, they probably also have nannies and all that kind of thing.
Mm.
So it used to make my blood boil when people used to say that, because I was like, I don't have time. Like, I don't have time. I really don't have time. The time I had to move my body was when I was out and about pushing a pram and going for a walk. That was really, for quite a few years, the only activity, or that I could do. And then occasionally 10 minutes doing some stretches in the living room. I did not have
Hmm.
time to drive 10 minutes to go to the nearest gym to go and do an hour long workout to come back. Just didn't
Yeah,
exist. So what do you think about that?
I think you're right to be furious when people say, "Oh, we all have the same 24 hour." I'm desperately trying not to swear on your lovely podcast.
Feel
So,
free,
like,
feel free. We are liberal as well.
because yeah, I feel really passionately about this. Like, no, we don't all have the same 24 hours in a day. And I know that there are a lot of people out there who are like, well, I'm a dad or I'm this or I'm a parent or I'm that, and I get up at 5 a.m. and I do this and I do that. It's like, okay, bro, cool,
Yeah,
cool. Um, but again, anyone who has a real understanding of psychology and the nervous system and diversity from one person to another understands that, just because one person can, have three kids and be up at 5 a.m. doesn't mean another can. There are so many different variables. I used to work for this gym in Brighton in the UK, and the managers of this gym had this one member who they put on a real pedestal. You know, be more like this guy. He has three kids, he works full time, and yet he is out there kite surfing every weekend and training every morning or whatever. And I have questions.
I have questions too.
Yeah, like
Who's looking after the children is a big question.
yeah, like, I mean, I have questions for his wife. Like, I have questions because my experience of working with couples and working with individuals who have kids or have very demanding careers, yeah, something's got to give somewhere.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I do with people is help with training programs and nutrition in a way that takes these things into account.
Yeah.
One of the most important things, especially with training and exercise, being adjusting intensity and quantity. So I don't want to go down the sports science rabbit hole around that right now, but yeah, like we need to make adjustments.
Mm, yeah, totally. And on that point, so tell us a little bit about your approach with clients. So it's about making sure that things are sustainable. And I know that you're not into the whole idea of things that unsustainable diets or like really punishing workouts. So tell us a bit more about how you approach that with clients. And I'm sensing from what you've said is that every client is totally different. So
Yeah. So addressing stress management is one of the first things. So plugging the leaks wherever we can. I know that no one's going to have a perfect scenario, but if there is energy leaking out in a particular direction where energy actually maybe doesn't need to be leaking out, then that's something that we need to address. The term misery stabilizers comes up in the relationship work that I do now, a misery stabilizer being something that delivers a very, very temporary sense of numbness or distraction while simultaneously making the larger situation much harder or much worse. So, for example, I've worked with quite a few people who struggle getting decent sleep, not because they're actually being kept up, but because of revenge bedtime procrastination, which is a loose translation from I think it's a Chinese or Japanese, maybe Chinese expression where you're not getting enough of what you want for yourself during the day. So you stay up later at the end of the day, just kind of doing this or that at the expense of your sleep, trying to claim back some time.
yeah.
But then, of course, that feeds into this spiral where you feel even worse the following day, etc., etc. So things like being in bed scrolling
Mm,
and like that kind of thing, I'm never going to tell someone, okay, you need to have the perfect diet or you need to have the perfect program. And we want to be realistic and compassionate when it comes to those things. However, if there is something in our lives that is essentially just not helping and
Mm,
it's making the situation worse, particularly something that's compromising our sleep or making it difficult to show up in our important relationships and feel supported in our important relationships, I'm going to address those things
mm,
first, before I say, okay, let's do like a 5 day split where you get under the barbell for 90 minutes every, like, no, like, so yeah, first port of call is stress management.
mm. So it's taking quite a holistic approach then. So thinking wider. I'm going back to what you said about obstacles. It's like what could be holding you back.
Hmm.
And then once you've plugged those gaps, what would be next with a client?
First of all, asking them where would they like to develop some skills
Mm,
first. Like, I do a lot of listening. I want to know what people want rather than putting them through a cookie cutter style
mm,
program. But say if they want to get stronger, we'll be looking at skill development rather than, all right, here's your program, go and do it. I'll be streamlining the number of different movements or lifts or exercises that we do and focusing on building confidence and consistency performing these particular movements before we start introducing a whole lot of intensity. Now, it's very easy. This is one of those boring things like, oh, but I want to progress now. Like, want like, ugh, like, isn't that slow? Like, well, it's actually a hell of a lot faster than jumping in the deep end, burning out, and restarting the whole cycle every 6 fucking months.
mm,
So, yeah, um, slow down to speed up is really the approach that I recommend when it comes to other practices.
mm. And so you help people with both movement, but also their relationship with food as well.
Hmm. Yeah. So in that sense, I've done some work studying under Jake Lenarden. I think he's the founder of Break Binge Eating, and he developed an amazing course for fitness professionals
Mm.
to fitness and health professionals.
Yeah.
So I'm not a eating disorder psychologist like in the way that you are, but I'm a eating disorder or disordered eating informed fitness
Mm,
professional who
yeah.
can apply certain lenses to help with those things in the context of nutrition
Mm,
and training.
yeah. Interesting, because I definitely think they often come hand in hand, don't they? That
Mm.
the disordered relationship with movement is often related to a disordered relationship with food as well.
Yes. Yeah, very much. They often go hand in hand, and
Mm,
there are any number of ways that that can play out in dysfunctional ways, but usually it's some kind of roller coaster effect. There's
mm.
high effort or high restriction for a period of time that then results in a crash and overcompensation in one direction or the other, and then another cycle or period of time of high restriction or high effort followed by a crash.
Yeah.
Broadly, that's what most people are.
Right. Yeah, I often use that analogy of a pendulum swinging. If you bring it back, so restriction in one direction leads to a binge in the other direction. It's that pendulum swing. So we want to find a bit more balance around here rather than here.
Yeah. And how unexciting does that sound? How unexciting does balance sound
Yes.
in the
Yeah.
face of all these things that's like, this 8 week thing, or, you eat anything you want for one day and then you fast for this, like it's
Hmm.
balance, moderation, skills, all these things sound so boring
Yes,
in the face of what's out there. But yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And I think what is so often sold is like this is the answer. Finally, you found the answer. Like you say, it's like
yeah,
just fast for X number of days and then you can eat whatever you want, or time restrict your eating, or do this for 30 days. Or I was working with a client recently who had done so like I think it was like a 48-hour cleanse or something, like i.e. not eating anything for 48 hours and
Hmm.
all those things that are sold as like if you just do this one thing, then you'll be fine. And this is a problem. I actually was, funnily enough, writing a blog post about this morning, is that the diet and the fitness and the wellness industry, that it is in their vested interest to keep you coming back. So, just one more try, just try one more thing. If you just try this one more thing, then everything will be fine. So you try
Yeah,
that thing and then you fail. You feel like you said earlier, like you feel like you're the problem. And then you're like, but it's okay because there's this other thing and I'll try this. And then you try that for a few days or a month or 2 months or 6 months, and then that doesn't work. And then you're starting this cycle all over again. So,
exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it.
yeah. And I'm really curious. I know you work with both men and women because I predominantly work with women. Would you say that, well, how is their relationship with eating or disordered eating or relationship with body image different or similar to each other? Do you find a huge difference between the two, or are you finding a lot of similarities?
The biggest difference is that most men feel very unsafe talking about it. And they might push back against the idea of like, oh, unsafe. Like, no, I don't resonate with that. But talking about these things for most men threatens their internal model of masculinity, threatens this I'm invulnerable, I'm strong, I can do this.
Interesting.
It it will mean something about me if I come out and say that I'm struggling with this. A lot of men are getting better at talking about it. And this is not like a character flaw. Like we have been conditioned
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
to feel like our value is in our ability to be invulnerable
Mm,
and to perform and deliver value. A man's value is about not who he is or his character. It's about, all right, but what can you do though? Like what? How can you contribute? Like how can you provide? How can you deliver? You can be the best guy in the world on the inside, but if you're not showing up to do X, Y, and Z, then what good are you?
mm,
And to admit that, okay, I'm struggling with this, that's that's a big obstacle for most men. The problem or the big obstacle that I notice for most women is that the social pressure around having a very specific body type
yeah.
is much more aggressive.
Mm,
So if we're talking about social stereotypes and social standards, a man can be considered successful, masculine, attractive, showing up in quite a variety of different forms,
mm,
but there is such an aggressive and narrow expectation for women. And so I've noticed that both men and women have challenges and they're different. But of course there is crossover as well. But yeah, those are the two biggest difference that I noticed. And
so
that
so
yeah.
interesting. I have two questions off the back of that. So uh, I'll start with so I'm finding it really interesting with so I have a 14-year-old son,
Hmm.
and recently he has become more interested, let's say. I'm not quite yet, yeah, more focused on changing his body. So he started working out in his room. He wanted to get some protein shake. And we're very strict about his access to social media and all that kind of thing. He has a little bit of access, but is very kind of tightly controlled. He's still on a Nokia phone, like one of the very few people in his year, etc., as he tells me many, many times. So, but the influence is so strong, despite the fact that we're not allowing him to spend hours on Instagram or YouTube or anything. And we talk about it very openly. So he tells me about all the like the looks maxing and all that kind of thing. But
Oof.
the the pressure already that I'm hearing that he says that I guess he's feeling about making sure that I don't know, that he works out, that he has, builds his muscles and that kind of thing.
Mm.
I mean, I don't know if you're noticing that kind of trend at all, or whether people are coming to you earlier. I don't know.
Yeah, the pressure on young people is changing. Now,
Mm.
there has been pressure on young women to look a particular way forever. Like
Yes.
and it is brutal.
Yeah.
Like absolutely brutal. What I'm noticing is that now young men are joining them. Now
Yeah.
there is this different but uh observable pressure on young men to show up looking a very particular way. And there is a whole lot of content and an entire social space and community that will pander to that and
Yeah.
encourage that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, young men are in a uh, precarious place.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I have a son and a daughter. My daughter's 11, and I've spent so much more effort worrying about her and being very clear about, all bodies are good bodies. And we've done a lot of kind of body image conversations and, food is neither good or bad or whatever. But I feel like my focus has been on her because I know what it was like for me growing up when I did. And yet they're exposed to so much more now than I was in the 90s. And yet I look at the difference and then she's younger, so maybe it's because she hasn't been exposed to so much, but he's way more kind of image conscious and that kind of thing than my daughter. And I'm like, oh, I need to be worried about both children when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to body image and the pressures that they have. So
Mm-hmm. As you were mentioning that just now, I pulled up a link on my other screen here. There is an absolutely brilliant uh, gentleman out there by the name of, oh my goodness, I wish I could pronounce his last name properly, and I'm so embarrassed about this, by Dr. Brendan, damn it, quite, I'm so sorry, Brendan. I'm messing this up, but his website is re uh, dot masculine.
okay.
So yeah, re masculine. Dr. Brendan. He talks about specifically uh, mental health for young men and boys.
Interesting.
So anyone listening, if you do have sons, this guy is the dude. Also, there's a wonderful book called The Adonis Complex that was written a couple of decades ago now, but it is literally the only book of its kind ever written on men's body image and
Oh,
how
interesting.
that plays out. So by Dr. Harrison G. Pope.
Okay. Oh, funnily enough, my son's called Harrison. Um,
Okay.
uh, that's great. Maybe we link them in the description. Both of those.
Yeah.
I'll pester you for that, Dr.
And
Brendan.
in a slightly more mainstream observable context, there is a film called Bigger, Faster, Stronger
Okay.
that's essentially about performance enhancing drug use and male body image and everything like that. Again, that was the film that I heard about Dr. Harrison G. Pope
Ah,
through.
okay.
So yeah, these three resources really do well. There's the
Okay.
film. You could like watch that with your kids.
Yes, yes.
It's a great film. It's a little bit dated maybe, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard. We're learning as we go when it
Yeah.
comes
To-
to young men at the moment.
Totally. And the second question I had off the back of what you said earlier about expectations for women, have you noticed any change over the last few years with the rise of GLP-1s? Because I've seen obviously in the media the shrinking of bodies, but in terms of the people you work with, have you seen that impact at all?
Yeah, it's been really divisive with what I've seen at least. I'd be curious to know your experience, but I've definitely noticed a fluctuation in the number of people that are interested in things like uh, rejecting body image standards.
Mm,
That was quite prominent 2022, 2023.
yeah.
Now, yeah, that has taken a hit, and some people are aggressively rejecting the idea that GLP-1s exist, which I think is problematic in its own way because I don't
Yeah.
think that is all bad. I think that, medications that could potentially support people, there is a place for them, but the way those medications are making their way into just popular culture and
Yeah.
being given to people who, I'm sorry, but should not be taking them,
Agreed.
uh, that's a real disaster. And
Yeah.
it's difficult. Though again, it's complicated because I know that some people I work with who've been dealing with food noise for a long time, and have never, no matter how much therapy or how much coaching, they've struggled to gain traction. They're looking at other options and medical support. And in the US, Vyvanse or Elvance used to be prescribed, maybe still is, for binge eating at food noise. So it's so complicated.
Yeah, it is complicated, isn't it? I mean, in my practice, I've worked. I mean, I've seen people across all points of the spectrum. I've had people who have tried GLP-1s, had terrible experiences with them. I had one client who had to have her gallbladder removed because of being on GLP-1s, and then come to see me and healed her relationship with food that way. I've worked with people who have sort of tried it, just like you say, to kickstart the initial food noise reduction, and then come to work with me to
Hmm.
actually deal with underlying issues around food. And I think that's been one of my kind of biggest observations. I agree with you. I think GLP-1s have an absolute place. They really do. But for the right people who really need them and who are being monitored by
Yeah,
healthcare professionals, where I'm seeing them being used on the quote unquote black market, or, in my opinion, dodgy healthcare professionals that are giving
yeah,
GLP-1s to people who should not be on them, who are already, in the normal BMI range. I mean, BMI issues aside, like, they should not be on these drugs. And I've also seen people who years ago suffering from eating disorders now got their hands on GLP-1s, and they
oof,
have a problematic relationship with food, and again should not be on GLP-1. So, and I think the other thing that I'm seeing also with my clients is that I'm definitely seeing it's almost like rewiring of what normal bodies look like.
yes,
And I think we're really lacking body diversity at the moment, and that worries me. Is that from a mindset perspective, people are seeing these very emaciated bodies as something to aspire to. And I think, like, my age that I am now, really restricting your diet now is just not good for your body. I mean, osteoporosis and all those kinds of things that we need to worry about as women on our 40s,
mm.
it worries me. It definitely does.
As it should. Yeah, I'm seeing some horrible parallels with GLP-1s and what we were seeing with the rise and or the popularity or increased popularity of TRT, so testosterone replacement therapy
Yeah.
in men or even female athletes, whatever, who do not need it.
Yeah.
So when I was in my 20s and still struggling to a large degree with body image issues and self-esteem issues and everything like that, all I needed to do was go to the right doctor,
Yes.
and they were more than willing to prescribe testosterone replacement therapy. I was 27 years old. My
Mm.
testosterone levels were fine, as well as a stack of performance enhancing peptides
Mm.
under the banner of, quote, anti-aging. I was a 27-year-old man with an eating disorder.
27.
27. And what that did was it dug the hole of what I was going through so much deeper.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're
Yeah.
seeing that now with GLP-1s, like just like testosterone replacement therapy. There's a place for that medication.
Yes.
Some people need it,
Yeah.
but uh, you know, being able to just go to the right doctor and tick the right boxes and say the right things and essentially be given whatever you want is not a good thing.
No. Yeah. And I think I worry that if GLP-1s had been around when I was late teens, early 20s, and I was obsessively pursuing dieting, I think I would have been one of those people that would have gone and got them somehow,
Mm,
on the black market and lied my way to get them. And I think this is happening. We're seeing people who have eating disorders who are seeing GLP-1s as a brilliant way. It's fantastic because they don't feel like eating. Wonderful. It kind of, you know, makes the whole not eating thing so much easier. That's
hmm.
worrying.
It is worrying. I know that my experience of being on TRT at such a young age, obviously I'm off that now, but
Mm,
one of the reasons why I believe so much in what I coach, what I practice, the work that I do in my counseling work is that I am literally fitter and stronger now at age 38, almost 39, without any pharmaceutical enhancement
mm,
than I was at the age of 27 with pharmaceutical assistance. And this has come through understanding what it is to manage stress, treat myself like a proper athlete,
yeah.
develop proper self-esteem, cultivate healthy relationships, and do all of that. I like and then I see ads on Instagram where super famous, I'm thinking of one guy in particular, a super famous weight loss coach who now sells and endorses a testosterone TRT, testosterone replacement therapy kind of company, will come out there and say, if you're seeing a man gain significant amounts of muscle in his 30s or 40s, then I guarantee you he's using TRT. And that's a fucking lie.
Yeah.
That's just a lie. And even if we're only talking about the very one-dimensional thing or the one topic of gaining muscle and strength, for example, most people trying to do that uh, are woefully misguided
Mm,
and then getting frustrated and not getting results and thinking, that's the problem. I must need pharmaceutical support. It's like, no, you don't.
yeah.
Like, it's tragic.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it goes back to what we've both said is that the GLP-1s for testosterone, for the right people in the right, at the right time with the right support, the healthcare support, absolutely, they can be really helpful. But it's the kind of the increase in people using these things when they really don't need to be using them. I think that's what's sad, really.
Mm.
So I'm going to move our conversation on to something a bit more positive. So if someone came to you and they wanted to heal their relationship with food and bodies, where should people start? What would be the kind of the main piece or pieces of advice you'd give them?
Take your attention away from the scales and the mirror and towards things that you have much more influence with, like
I love that.
skills and practices.
Mm,
Fundamentally, that is like the you've just walked through the door. This is this is the message, and
mm,
that branches off into many different things. But that's that's where we start.
love that. So, if people wanted to find out a bit more about you, Marcus, I've already said you must follow Marcus's podcast. Honestly, it's brilliant. He has lots of really great conversations with people, but also your like 15-minute kind of things on a particular topic, which are great as well, where he's just talking. if people want to find out a bit more about you, where should they go? And if you've got anything that you want to tell people about, feel free.
Sure. So strongnot starving.com. This is my website where that's the base of operations for the training, nutrition, stress management side of things, which branches out into the Strong Not Starving YouTube channel and podcast. I've also got a second website called Relational Skills Lab, which is focused purely on the relational health elements of what we do here. So that is about individual and couples coaching for relationships. Even some people I work with struggle in relationships with family members or friends or that kind of thing. So Relational Skills Lab is about our relationships. Strong Not Starving is where we go for the practical kind of food, nutrition, stress management, how to be healthy
Amazing.
stuff.
Brilliant. I will link everything in the description below. So you'll see them all there if you want to find out a little bit more about following Marcus or finding out more about what he offers.
Thank you so
Um,
much.
so thank you so much. That conversation just went so quickly. It was brilliant to have you and chat to you today. I really appreciate you chatting to me today.
Thanks for the invitation. Yeah, time goes really fast when I get to chat with you. So it's been super nice to be here. And yeah, thank you for the invitation.
You.